নমস্কার, শুভ সন্ধ্যা। রাষ্ট্রবিজ্ঞান চর্চা কেন্দ্রের আজকের আলোচনায় সবাইকে স্বাগত। আজকে একটি বিশেষ আলোচনা সভা রয়েছে। আজকের এই আলোচনা সভার মূল বিষয় রামকৃষ্ণ আইডিয়াস অফ রিলিজিয়াস টলারেন্স। আজকের এই আলোচনা মুখ্য আলোচক ডক্টর প্রলয়ঙ্কর ভট্টাচার্য, অ্যাসোসিয়েট প্রফেসর অ্যান্ড হেড অফ ডিপার্টমেন্ট অফ ফিলোসফি, ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ ক্যালকাটা। আজকের এই আলোচনায় চেয়ারপারসন রয়েছেন আমাদের অতি পরিচিত আমাদের স্যার ডক্টর প্রদীপ বাসু, ফর্মার প্রফেসর, ডিপার্টমেন্ট অফ পলিটিক্যাল সায়েন্স, এক্স ডিন অফ আর্টস, প্রেসিডেন্সি ইউনিভার্সিটি। আমি স্যারকে অনুরোধ জানাবো আজকের এই আলোচনাটা পরিচালনা করার জন্য। ধন্যবাদ।
Today, Rashtrabigyan Chorcha Kendra has organized a special seminar on Ramakrishna's ideas of religious tolerance. Our revered speaker is Dr. Pralayankar Bhattacharyya. As always, I first of all thank Rashtrabigyan Chorcha Kendra and its organizers, Professor Shomiran Das, and Advocate Prakash Chakraborty and others. Let me introduce very briefly our speaker. Dr. Pralayankar Bhattacharya, or in Bengali we say Bhattacharya, is the associate professor and current head of the Department of Philosophy, University of Calcutta. He is also a guest faculty in the Department of Philosophy postgraduate section, Belur Vidya Mandira, perhaps that is the correct. His areas of interest and research are social and political philosophy, ethics, metaphysics, continental philosophy, philosophy of Kant, Greek philosophy, feminist ethics, postmodernity, modern Indian thinkers like Tagore, Vivekananda, Gandhi. He has published several important research papers in different journals. He has published 26 articles. Some recent articles have been written on Immanuel Kant, Karl Marx, Martin Heidegger, Jean-Paul Sartre, the concept of justice, Mahatma Gandhi, Rabindranath Tagore, environmental ethics, etc. And he has co-edited 2 books. We are very happy and grateful to him that he has agreed to give a lecture on Ramakrishna's ideas of religious tolerance. Very briefly speaking, I was from my childhood in Kolkata. We have been brought up in families, and most of the middle class Bengali Hindu families were like this. We learnt about Ramakrishna. In Bengali, we call Ramakrishna Paramhansadev and his disciple Swami Vivekananda and his disciple Sister Nivedita. And we know about Ramakrishna's teachings of Jato Mat, Tato Path. There are different ways to attain God. So there was a kind of tolerance and pluralism which inspired us from our very childhood. And lot of people, mostly Hindu and some Muslims also, they have subscribed to the teachings of Ramakrishna. And this is a situation when religious dogmatism, religious orthodoxy have pervaded the Indian subcontinent, including India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, etc. also Myanmar, Sri Lanka, etc. And today, when we think that Ramakrishna was a great Hindu monk, some people believe he was a saint, he was a mystic. Romalola described him, the French philosopher Roma Rolla described him as a mystic. And we know that in this situation, Ramakrishna's teachings of Hinduism is very important. Perhaps there is a clear distinction between today's Hindutva and Ramakrishna's Hinduism or Hindu Dharma. I am not an expert in this field, and we are earnestly looking forward to Professor Pralayankar Bhattacharya. He is very competent. He has discussed several other lectures here, other topics. I now request, before I request him to take up, I will give another thing that Rashtrabigyan Chorcha Kendra is a very big organization of students of political science, teachers, and doctoral students all over West Bengal. And many people outside West Bengal, some abroad, have also been communicated about this lecture. That is why we have planned to organize it in English language. And this Rashtrabigyan Chorcha Kendra has not only provided academic help to the poor students all over the districts of West Bengal, in Purulia, in Bankura, in Kuch Bihar, also in Calcutta, Kolkata, Durgapur, Asansol. And not only that, they have also given financial help, books and articles of education to the poor and unprivileged, underprivileged students in West Bengal. So we are very grateful to Rashtrabigyan Chorcha Kendra. They have already completed more than 350 lectures, and I am so fortunate that I have been invited to chair many of these lectures. Chairperson has no work to do. I am not at all important. Okay, so I just switch to Professor Pralayankar Bhattacharya. Please start. Professor Bhattacharya, please start.
Yes, am I audible? Okay. So first of all, I express my deep sense of gratitude to Rashtrabigyan Chorcha Kendra for inviting me to deliver a lecture on Sri Ramakrishna's ideas of religious tolerance. And I also feel honored that Professor Basu, our respected sir, Professor Pradip Basu, is chairing this session. So today I will speak on Ramakrishna's ideas of religious tolerance. To begin with, a statement that is made by Amartya Sen in Identity and Violence. He has written there, one of his chapters, that recent theories about clashing civilizations have tended to draw much on religious difference as a central characteristic of differing cultures. Now, if we look at the world, we find today these differing cultures, diversity, especially in India, in our own country, there is so much the rich diversity we come across. And that is why once Rabindranath Tagore considered that our problem in India is basically social, not political. However, if we look at our own tradition, we find that at the root of the idea of religious tolerance that I'm today going to talk about, there is the idea of religious pluralism. The Vedic maxim that many of you know asserts that truth or reality is one, although the sages describe the reality in different ways. Ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse number 11, Krishna says, who to him, and that all paths in the end lead to me. Je jathamang prapadyante tang stativa bhajamyaham. That is also a very famous assertion that you find in the Gita, chapter 4, verse number 11. Now, all these assertions, all these statements imply that religions are so many different ways of understanding and realizing the absolute or the God or the ultimate reality, or to use the Hegelian expression, the Geist. Entering into the discussion of Ramakrishna's ideas of religious tolerance, let me state at the outset two basic problems in the context of religious tolerance. Firstly, when we are talking about religious tolerance, we are emphasizing, and of course we are concerned about institutional religions as preached and practiced, especially Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, such big institutional religions. And these interacted, they fought, they imposed, they borrowed each other's gods, goddesses, rites, rituals, practices. Sometimes this has led to some sort of fusion. And many times it has led to an extreme form of religious intolerance, leading to violence. Now, the first question is about how to combat this religious intolerance and violence and pave the way for some sort of fusion or harmony or tolerance to become the permanent feature of human civilization, especially a few minutes back. This is our first problem before us. Secondly, that I want to mention, it is more philosophical. Sometimes the idea of tolerance, the concept of tolerance, and therefore the very expression tolerance seems to be a problematic one, seems to be a complex one. Why I am saying so? Because the problem is that whether tolerance can be considered as a virtue, this is the philosophical question that virtue. Many scholars would consider that since tolerance involves some sort of abiding, abiding something that one rejects, and abiding something that I really do not want to accept within. Tolerance is a negative expression. It has some sort of negative implication, because tolerance sometimes implies that I don't like you, I don't accept you, but I have to tolerate you, and I allow you to live, I allow you to live with me or to be with me. So once Vivekananda said that tolerance therefore implies, sometimes it seems to be some sort of blasphemy, that who are you, Vivekananda asks, to allow somebody to exist or to live in a society. So you can understand, many scholars therefore have concluded that tolerance seems to be an impossible virtue. Impossible virtue. The tolerance also, it seems to imply, therefore, the tolerance of what is intolerable as injustice. Since the idea of tolerance is closely bound up with an extensive system of cultural pluralism, it seems to suffer from what once Max Weber, those who are scholars or teachers from sociology or political science, they know very well that, to borrow the words of Max Weber, that such tolerance seems to suffer sometime from absolute relativization and obsession with hierarchy, denial of the other as an agent, and it is used as a device of manipulation by the powerful agent. Now, recently, many scholars have drawn our attention to this problem. For example, to this particular problem, I'm not going into the details of this for the sake of brevity. Now, I come to the second section of my lecture. Sri Ramakrishna, who was 20 years senior to Freud, 25 years senior to Rabindranath Tagore, was a cult figure of our Bhakti movement of the 19th century Bengal, even all over the India. And he never encouraged, to be precise, the metaphysical speculations about the purpose of creation, the cause of the world, that is the first cause of the world, and Aristotle has dealt with the issue, or the meaning of the evil. He refrained himself from making any judgments about these issues like Buddha. And he lived a life of truthfulness, humility, and unattachment. He believed that our intellect can solve these questions that I've just raised through conjectures, supported by arguments, through reasoning. But according to him, the real solutions to such questions exist in a different level of experience, entirely from the one in which the questions are asked. That is, through an unmediated revelation. But unmediated revelation is not open to all. Everybody doesn't have that kind of access. It comes through practice and meditations and a kind of lifestyle. It can be reached. The common people are not supposed to attain that sort of perfection always. So that might come through unmediated revelation. And as I am concerned, of course, I don't have that kind of unmediated revelation, so I have to take the help of intellect. But for the sake of brevity, of course, I won't discuss about all this. But and Sri Ramakrishna was very much clear that he is not going into those questions like who created the world, who was the first cause of this world, and what is the meaning of the evil. All these questions he puts within the bracket like Buddha. Hence, as far as today's lecture is concerned, the idea of Ramakrishna about religious tolerance need to be understood from a pragmatic point of view, independently of any kind of metaphysical speculations about the creation of the world, about the meaning of evil. That is, the idea of religious tolerance has to be understood as far as our social and ethical problems about institution and religions are concerned. So I just try to make it clear at the outset. Now I come to the third section of my lecture. All religions, almost all over the world, we need to understand that, is to achieve holiness, irrespective of all rites and rituals and practices. But as Richard Schiffman, who has argued in his book entitled Sri Ramakrishna, a prophet for the new age, very particular to point out that holiness should not be confused with some static list of ideal qualities. Holiness is a process, like Immanuel Kant, who believed that moral perfection is a process. One has to achieve that kind of perfection. And if it is not possible in this life, we have to believe that perhaps it will be possible in the next life. Although he never, argued in favor of rebirth or something like that, but he stretched that process of achieving moral perfection to that extent. So Ramakrishna, also like Kant, also holds this view that holiness is a process that has to be achieved, that is a growth to wholeness. Now, different institutional religions like to bisect the world we see every day, prescribe certain rites and rituals, and on the basis of that constitute a hierarchy, unfortunately, and thereby a culture of hegemony. Once they are as an opium. Marx is criticized for that. But Marx said that religion becomes opium, such institutional religion that alienates man from others, that alienates man from his own potentiality. It alienates man from his freedom. So even Vivekananda has considered such religion as devil's dance in one of his letters. However, morality, as far as it will be unfolded throughout our discussion, that according to Ramakrishna, morality should be the foundation as demanded by religion. This also sees eye to eye with that view of Immanuel Kant. Now, prefabricated rules, regulations are not enough. Each man's own personalized set of God-oriented commandments, his or her own swadharma, the law of it. And for each of us, these commandments, more precisely this swadharma, is subtly adjusting itself moment to moment to the particular situation and to the stage of our growth in truth. That is what Ramakrishna wanted to emphasize. Now, I go back to Richard Skiffman, who draws our attention to Ramakrishna's idea of religion very, in a very lucid, is not a collection of pleasantly vague and virtuous sentiments. Two inviolable principles for Ramakrishna, as far as religion is concerned, are: the first one is to love God. Very simple, but very insightful. To love God and not to harm God's creatures. It is to be noted here that Ramakrishna placed love in a higher position than any or any kind of psychological compulsion. Now, it is very clear, according to Ramakrishna, and which was later developed by Swami Vivekananda, that duty to help the poor. For example, if we take an example, for example, to help the poor or the marginalized is a sacred privilege. You, everybody must remember, or if I say, you notice everyday experience, that whenever we give alms to the beggar, we offer pranam. We do this because you gave me the opportunity to donate something to you. This is my privilege, that I became able to donate something to you, or you accepted alms from me. So this is my sacred privilege. Whenever I help somebody, a poor person or a marginalized. So that is Rabindranath's, that famous utterance, that grohon korecho joto rini toto korecho amai. So if you accept from me, I am indebted to you. This is my sacred privilege. That is Ramakrishna's view. And it is not a duty to be fulfilled with compulsion or for any kind of condition like fame or something like that. Through love, we will proceed towards the truth, the wholeness, the God who is love. Almost that kind of love. God is love. So Ramakrishna himself realized that, we know that from Ramakrishna's life, if you go through Kathamrita or many other writings on Ramakrishna by Swamiji and many others who enjoyed the nearness of Sri Ramakrishna, that watching a man trampling a field of recently sprouted grass, he actually felt seeing a bull brutally whipped. He cried out of agony, and his own back became stricken, and marks were shown, on his back. It almost like the last days of Nietzsche when he was living in the Turin city, that when he wasn't mentally stable, it is told. And one day morning, when he found that a horse was brutally whipped by somebody, he rushed out of his room and he hugged the horse, and he fell on the ground and became senseless. So Ramakrishna could feel suffering suffered by somebody else. That is a kind of wholeness. That is love. That is compassion. That is empathy. That is told by today's heretics. So in this proceeding towards wholeness, initially we might require rites and rituals, but rites and rituals have no ultimate value in this process. Finally, I come to my fourth section. Ramakrishna, it is to be remembered, that was not a system builder. We have to keep that in mind. He was not a systematic philosopher in the sense Aristotle was. He was not a system builder. He never presented any systematic philosophy of religion. Even he didn't write any books like Socrates. Whatever we come to know about his ideas of religion, of religious tolerance, from his Kathamrita or from some other writings written by his disciples or lectures given by his disciples. But it is to be shown as a byproduct of his understanding of religious pluralism. But let me put it very clearly, before entering into that, let me put it very clearly that religious pluralism, it's philosophical, needs to be interpreted, and it needs to be differentiated from religious exclusivism and religious inclusivism. Those who are who know about philosophy of religion or comparative religion, they know it very well that today in the philosophy of religion we discuss about religious pluralism as distinguished from religious exclusivism and religious inclusivism. Now, there is a very interesting writing by Perry Leukel. Perry Leukel, in his article published in the book The Myth of Religious Superiority. The name of the book is The Myth of Religious Superiority, which was edited by Paul Kitter. The book was published around 2005 or 2006. I cannot exactly remember. But Leukel has precisely separated it from religious exclusivism and inclusivism. So first of all, what is religious exclusivism? As defined by Leukel in that book, and much before that, in 1983, by Alan Ress, who was a great scholar of religion. However, religious exclusivism is that when salvific knowledge, the knowledge associated with our emancipation, liberation, or salvation, so salvific knowledge of transcendent reality, that has to be kept in mind. According to exclusivism, salvific knowledge of a transcendent reality is mediated by only one religion, and which, of course, naturally will be one's own religion. So you can understand exclusivism rejects all other religions that can mediate the knowledge of the transcendent reality, the knowledge of the Geist, again to use the Hegelian expression. Now you can understand such religious exclusivism naturally leads to fundamentalism and fanaticism, because you will find that most of the fanatics and fundamentalists, like Islam, Christianity, and Hinduism, they believe in some sort of exclusivism. They believe that only my religion can mediate the knowledge. So exclusivism is almost synonymous with fundamentalism or fanaticism, normally, naturally. Although exclusivism has been differently explained or interpreted by some scholars like Frank Morales or someone like that, that is a kind of radical universalism. If I am a universalist, then I can be an exclusivist, because universalism can mean all, everything, every other. But that is not properly exclusivism. However, I'm setting aside the debate right now. For the time being, let us try to understand that exclusivism is that sort of religious view which accepts that only my religion can mediate the knowledge of the reality. Now, I come to religious inclusivism, salvific knowledge of the transcendent reality is mediated by more than one religion. It believes that it can be mediated by more than one religion and not necessarily by all of them. But the condition is there. Only one of these religions mediates it. It means the knowledge of the reality in a uniquely superior way, which again will naturally be one's own. So you can understand, as far as religious inclusivism is, many religions, not my own, who can mediate the knowledge of the transcendent reality, but ultimately believes that my own religion does it in a uniquely superior way. So that is a kind of inclusivism, and in that sense, it one step further, it goes and it says that it can include all other religions, as it is superior in the sense that it can mediate the knowledge of the reality in a better way than other religions. So sometimes sometimes it seems to me that in some lectures Vivekananda even seems to be an inclusivist, especially Sanatana Dharma has got all the good qualities and it can harmonize, it can include all other religions, or it deals with the presuppositions of all other religions. Anyway, this is again a debatable issue. Sure. That is, according to religious pluralism, salvific knowledge of transcendent reality is mediated by more than one religion. This portion is similar with religious inclusivism. But just I read that salvific knowledge of a transcendent reality is mediated by more than one religion and not necessarily by all of them. And there is none among those religions whose mediation of that knowledge, among them whose mediation of that knowledge is superior to all the rest. That is, when one religion is ready to accommodate other religions as equal and never considers itself as superior to others in the sense that it can mediate knowledge in a better way, that is religious pluralism. Now, Ramakrishna, as I claim, and not I claim, who am I to claim, but as I try to understand Ramakrishna, Swami Medhananda of Ramakrishna Mission has tried to emphasize on this aspect of Ramakrishna, that Ramakrishna's view is neither exclusivism nor inclusivism, but religious pluralism. In the Kathamrita, I start, if we Kathamrita, the gospel teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, as it was told to Mahendranath Gupta. In the Kathamrita, Ramakrishna says, a very earnestness, one can realize God through all religions. The Vaishnavas will realize God, so with the Shaktas, the Advaita Vedantins, and the Brahmas, even Muslims, Christians will realize him too. Here lies Ramakrishna's liberal outlook, and it is clear from this that his liberal pluralist view, as I consider, his liberal pluralist view is dynamic, flexible, and accommodative, which is, as we find in the Kathamrita, that the paths to God are infinite. I repeat, the paths, the means, the paths to God. He has given so many examples in the context. In the Kathamrita, he has given so many examples. Take the examples of the rivers. There are so many rivers from different directions coming, and they are going to the same ocean. There is a mountain top. There are so many ways to reach at the mountain top. You are trying to reach at the roof. You can use by the stone stairs. You can use the brick stairs. You can use the wooden stairs. You can use the iron stairs. Even you can use the bamboo stairs to reach the rooftop. The water, the example of water, famous example, it is called in by different names. We know these are very simple examples. He has taken up the examples from a daily life, and that is the fascinating aspect of Sri Ramakrishna, that he seems so near and dear to us in our everyday life. The basic point is therefore the equal salvific efficacy that I want to emphasize, the equal salvific efficacy of various religions. Ramakrishna defines religion as dharma or moth in Bengali. Very sometimes very common languages the village people use sometimes. The city urban people sometimes maybe do not use those languages. He used to speak that kind of language. So he used to refer to dharma sometimes as moth in Bengali. And that famous assertion, as it has been mentioned in the beginning by Sir, Joto moth toto poth, has become a slogan almost in various religions with their differing and often conflicting truth claims. There are conflicting truth claims. You will find when you compare Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism, there are, of course, conflicting truth claims. But with their differing and this conflicting truth claims, religions appeal to people of various temperaments and cultures. But all religions are salvifically effective paths to the common goal of God realization. So Ramakrishna used to, he actually used to prefer God realization sometimes to the word God realization. But one should never assume that other religions are not salvifically effective paths to God realization because their truth claims differed from the truth claims of my own religions. So since his religion's truth claims differ from the truth claims of my religion, we cannot conclude that it is inferior to me, or I have the power to include it, or I can consider it as inferior, or that is not the right path. Now, in view of this kind of understanding, this is very initial understanding, the very understanding of religious pluralism as considered by Ramakrishna, as we find in Kathamrita. But philosophers situated to raise questions and problems. As a student of philosophy, also, I'm not an exception to this. Problems are there here also. philosophically, because there are certain scholars, there are certain philosophers and renowned philosophers who have raised questions in the context of Ramakrishna's view, yato mat tato pat, jato mat tato pat. So this view is not freeism, is not free from critical assessment. I can mention immediately two scholars.
অধ্যাপক প্রলয়ঙ্কর ভট্টাচার্য, he has some network issues, I think. He exited. Perhaps there is no network connection. Prakash. 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 Prakash.
Am I audible now, sir?
হ্যাঁ, এখন শোনা যাচ্ছে এখন.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
Okay. There was some sort of interruption. Okay. So I was talking about the critical part of my lecture, and there are two questions in this context. Only I would mention two scholars. One is Frank Morels, when Morels was developing his theory of radical universalism, and the other is no other than Indian philosopher and great scholar. Just 1 year back, he passed away, J.N. Mohanty, Professor Tatopat, and which was published in Sri Ramakrishna's Ideas and Our Times around 2013 by Golpak Ramakrishna Mission. Now, Morels and Mohanty, they have raised some subtle issues in this context as far as religious pluralism and Yatomat Tatopat of Ramakrishna is concerned. Now, I would chronologically, in an order, I would give three arguments against Yatomat Tatopat, then I will defend Ramakrishna's position. Now, the first argument, as we find from Morels and Professor J.N. Mohanty, is that for them, different religious ideas of the absolute or God are mutually exclusive, because their mythologies, their rituals, their origin, their paths, means. So ideas are about absolute or God are mutually exclusive. One believes in Shakaro, the other believes in Nirakaro. The one believes in idol worship, the other doesn't believe in idol worship. The one believes in one God, the other believes in many gods. So you can understand, so different religious ideas of the absolute or God are mutually exclusive. Hence, the goals of all religions, must be mutually exclusive. It is their logic. So their logic is that all and mountaintops are also different. For example, Nirvana or Buddha is different from Vedanta's Aham Brahmasmi. It is again different from Allah of the Islam. It is again different from the Jain. Someone is monotheistic, someone is polytheistic, someone is henotheistic, again someone is pantheistic, like Spinoza, etc. So all religious ideas are different, so the goals must be different. Second argument, different religious ideas of absolute or Geist are wholly irreconcilable. The reconciliation is not possible. And sometimes they are contradictory. Not only reconciliation among these religions are possible, they are not possible, but also they seem to be contradictory. Thus, it is simply false to claim that all religions aspire toward only one mountaintop or only one ocean. It is very difficult. It's a false claim as charged by morals and to some extent by Professor Mohanty. Number three argument, the argument three, as Morals argues, Frank Morals, one of these irreconcilable, mutually exclusive religions can be correct one. Now, if they are contradictory, if they are so radically different, if reconciliation is not possible, then the conclusion is one of these irreconcilable, mutually exclusive religions can be correct one, not all correct at the same time. It's a very logical claim. Thus, the exclusivist view stands that if one religion is true, then all other religions must be false. This is the logical claim, as Morals claimed in his article. Now, I come to Ramakrishna's defense or Ramakrishna's part. When Ramakrishna says that one can realize God through all religions, he means all genuine religions. That has to be underlined. All genuine religions lead to the absolute, to the ultimate reality, and thereby pluralism can be maintained according to Ramakrishna. Now here I will give certain arguments. The first argument, the genuine religions have to meet, according to Ramakrishna, two separate set of conditions. It can be included together, but for especially for the, if students are there and scholars are there, I am just describing in all these arguments, these conditions in two separate sets. The first is positive conditions. As far as genuine religion is concerned, the positive marks. What are the positive conditions of a genuine religion, according to Ramakrishna? Two positive conditions. The first one is any dharma or any mot, as Ramakrishna says, must have at its center some aspect or form of the divine reality, whether personal, the point to be noted, whether personal or impersonal, both is possible. That is why in Kathamrita he says all views point to him, the one, the God, the Shakto, the Vaishnava, and it is such a broad conception of religion that encompasses not only the theistic schools of Hinduism or Islam or Christianity, but also traditionally, formally non-theistic spiritual philosophy like Advaita Vedanta, like Spinoza, like the Brahma. So the God can be personal, the God can be impersonal. He who is impersonal can be personal. This is the first positive condition. The second positive condition is any genuine religion or must prescribe ethical or spiritual practices that bring us into contact with the divine reality. So you can understand, I told at the outset that Ramakrishna was emphasizing on the moral practice, ethical and spiritual practices that bring us into contact with the divine reality. And this is actually, that I mean to say, moral practice, the practice of love and forgiveness. Very important. The practice of love and forgiveness, practice of tolerance and non-violence. These are the two positive conditions. Now, the negative conditions. Moral practice, of this moral practice, these two negative conditions also imply moral practice. The first negative condition, it is not enough to disseminate love. Ramakrishna says that even you have to love the wicked person, but it is not enough to disseminate love, but to diminish egoism. This is essential for our nearness to God, for any kind of union, Love means diminishing egoism, because love demands that kind of submission of the ego. Even Hegel, when he was defining in his book Philosophy of Right, those who have gone through that book, when he was defining love as the basis of family life, he emphasized that love means that submission of the ego. So diminishing egoism is essential for any kind of union. The union can be the Aham Brahmasmi. The union can be, according to the Vaishnavas, the union of Krishna and Radha. So the union can be of the Jnani when he feels Aham Brahmasmi. The union can be of the devotee who seems to enjoy the nearness or union of his personal God, whatever else. So this diminishing egoism is essential. The second negative condition is to diminish selfishness. Then only if we can gradually diminish our selfishness, we can go through, we can practice forgiveness, we can practice compassion, we can practice forbearance, and they can be cultivated as ethical virtue. Thus, dharma, according to Ramakrishna, becomes ethical action, pious action, and adharma becomes unrighteous action. That actually, adharma separates us from others. Adharma separates us from the divine reality, from the absolute, from the union, from the relation. Hence, rites and rituals may differ according to Ramakrishna. Contradictions may be there, but these conditions must be met by any genuine religion. Now, Ramakrishna, my second argument is, Ramakrishna derives his idea of pluralism, which is of great importance. Ramakrishna derives his idea of pluralism and tolerance from the ontology of the infinite and undetermined God, which is very important philosophically, because his pluralism is based on some sort of ontology. What is that ontology? The ontology of the infinite God, the ontology of the infinite, undetermined, absolute. God is, if God, you can have the idea of God in any way. The Mahakal, Mahaprakriti, Mahashakti, Ishwar, Kali, Krishna, Geist, absolute, whatever you say, that big power, it can be the black hole of the science, whatever you say, that power is undetermined and infinite, and it is so vast. No one, no person, even no religion, established religion, can capture the absolute, the infinite, the undetermined, wholly, completely, fully. So no religion can determine the God fully. It is a claim of Ramakrishna. It is so modern. It's so liberal outlook. You can understand. Here lies the modernity of Ramakrishna's view that no religion can capture God completely. Thus, every genuine religion, as Ramakrishna says, captures, can grasp only some real aspect of the infinite, the goal of God realization. And therefore, what is fascinating about Ramakrishna's understanding is that the various religious ideas or views of the ultimate reality are complementary rather than conflicting. The way we can derive this conclusion, Ramakrishna comes to the conclusion that these religions are not contradictory, are not conflicting ultimately. Ultimately, they are complementary, according to Ramakrishna. So, from this forbearance thus demands that we should accept pluralism, and thereby religious practitioners can enrich, can broaden, can enlighten their understanding of the absolute, of God, of Mahakal, of Mahaprakriti, by learning from other religions. And as far as contradictory truth claims are concerned, for example, Jesus died on cross, Islams may not accept it. For example, reincarnation acknowledged by Hinduism and Buddhism, but Semitic religions, Abrahamic religions do not accept this. So there are the difference. There are the contradictory truth claims. But Ramakrishna says they are attached mostly with the rites and rituals. As Vivekananda once said, they are attached with the mythological aspects, the ritualistic aspects of religion. And moreover, at the transcendental level, when you realize the wholeness, when one feels thou art the master, when one realizes that I am he or I am his devotee, unconditional love, these become meaningless. These have no meaning. Therefore, it is true that from this point of view, that exclusivism, according to Ramakrishna, is unreasonable because it is dogmatic. Not only because you see that Ramakrishna's view is so different from others, why he rejects exclusivism and to some extent inclusivism also, because it seems to be dogmatism. He was always against any kind of dogmatism. He said, Motuar Buddhi, if you go through Kathamrito. He always rejected dogmatism, and exclusivism is synonymous with dogmatism. How does it describe one rejects other religions as salvifically efficacious? But without practicing other religions, the exclusivist rejects all of them and considers its own as superior. You don't practice other religions, and without practicing all other religions, you consider them inferior to your one, and you consider your religion only superior in this context. So, Ramakrishna says, maximum, I can say, my religion is right, but I do not know whether other religions are right or wrong. This is tolerance. This is forbearance. This is tolerance from ontological standpoint as well as from the epistemological standpoint. So my final submission, it is almost 8 o'clock. My final submission is Ramakrishna's idea of tolerance affolds a novel understanding of tolerance, which is pluralist, liberal, accommodative, and at the same time, it is novel in the sense that it tries to reject all kinds of dogmatism, all kinds of tyrannies that we find in the context of religion, and it gives equal status to other religions through empathy, through love, through forbearance. And he believes that these virtues need to be cultivated. They can be cultivated in our life. If we can cultivate these virtues, then we can understand that how we can gradually transcend and we can feel that kind of wholeness. At least as common people, we can feel that my religion, my view is only one aspect. That aspect is true, that is not false, but only one true aspect of the reality. There are other true aspects also. So I need to learn from others. I need to upgrade myself as a jnani, as a bhakto, whatever course I may take. But this continuous process of learning is the symbol, is a sign of that kind of submission of ego, that kind of forbearance, that kind of love. So, with these few words, I stop here. If there are questions, I have some other things to say, but I stop here. If questions come, questions arise, I will progress further. I will discuss such and other things. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Bhattacharya. I just want to make some comment with your kind permission. As you said, for Ramakrishna, you have beautifully expressed it that truth or reality has many facets, many aspects, and my religion is true because it can express one true aspect of the whole reality, while other religions can also express other true aspects of the ultimate truth. So, religions may be complementary. Perhaps in this connection, we can mention that see, Ramakrishna was born, as you mentioned, in 1836, and he died
Yes.
in 1886. Now,
Yeah.
when he was only 30 years old, in 1866, a Hindu man, Govinda Rai, who was previously initiated into Islam and practiced Sufism, initiated Ramakrishna into Islam, according to Chetanananda. Ramakrishna
Yes.
decided to practice Islam, and according to uh, Nirvanananda, he said, this also is a path to realization of God. I must see how through Islam,
Right.
we can attain the desired end. And Ramakrishna engaged himself in the practice of Islam according to its prescribed rules. He repeated the name of Allah devotedly and said Islamic prayers 5 times a day and remained in that state of mind for 3 days, after which he had full realization through their path. During this practice, Ramakrishna had a vision of a luminous figure, and Swami Nikhilananda's biography speculates that this figure was perhaps Muhammad himself. Ramakrishna repeated the name of Allah, put on a cloth like the Arab Muslims, said their prayer 5 times daily, and felt disinclined, disinterested, even to see images of the Hindu gods and goddesses, much less worship them. For, he said, for the Hindu way of thinking and had disappeared altogether from my mind. After 3 days of practice of Islam, he had a vision, and Ramakrishna opined that knowledge of Vedanta can make Hindus and Muslims sympathetic to one another. Quote, there is, as it were, a mountain of difference between Hindus and Muslims. Their thoughts and faiths, actions and behavior have remained quite unintelligible to one another in spite of their living together for so long a time. But the point is that if he also practiced Christianity, but I am not going into that. That is at the end of 1873, Ramakrishna started the practice of Christianity. After one of his devotees named Shambhu Chandra Mallik read the Bible to him, he got well acquainted with the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. Anyway, the point is that Ramakrishna, as you mentioned, gave a very unorthodox, undogmatized view of religion. And as you mentioned, it is kind of liberal pluralism. And perhaps he pointed to the way how Hindus and Muslims can respect each other's religions, respective religions, believing that, as you said, Joto Mat Toto Path, that every path is leading to the same truth, the ultimate truth. Anyway, I have a question here, but I will ask the question at last, because let others, if there is any other question, let others put it. Prakash, please.
Okay.
What did Ramakrishna Paramhansa preach about all religions?
Actually, this question
It's not very clear to
not
me.
very clear.
Yes. Perhaps he is trying
to be
to
very vague.
ask you that different religions, all religions, whether we can compare them as superior or inferior, correct or incorrect, etc.
Yes. Actually, that I have told. I have discussed that every religion should have respect for the other religion, in the sense that on the one hand, it is not superior to the others. On the other hand, it can also learn from other religions. And at the same time, it also considers its own religion as one of the paths. And it grasps only one true aspect of that innumerable aspects of the reality. So the reality has innumerable aspects. So one religion, particular religion, can grasp only one of those, one or two aspects of those innumerable aspects. So therefore, the religions, the contradictions that we discuss about, or the conflict we discuss about, that is very apparent. If we on closer observation, we find out that they are complementing each other, and therefore we should have respect, love, compassion for other religions also.
থ্যাংক ইউ স্যার। স্যার, আমার একটা প্রশ্ন আছে, করব?
হ্যাঁ, নিশ্চয়ই।
স্যার, প্রশ্নটি হলো যে বিবেকানন্দ এবং রামকৃষ্ণের রিলিজিয়াসের উপর মানে দুজনার ধারণা কি এক নাকি আলাদা, এটা যদি একটু বলতেন।
এইটা নিয়ে একটা পুরো গোটা আলোচনা করার মতো বিষয়। প্রশ্নটা খুব ভালো প্রশ্ন, এবং সেটা খুব কম এটা নিয়ে মানে আলাদা করে আলোচনা করা যায়। এটা কিন্তু এমন, মানে আমি যেটা বলতে চাইছি সেটা হচ্ছে যে রামকৃষ্ণকে যেভাবে আউট অ্যান্ড আউট একজন প্লুরালিস্ট বলা যায়, বিবেকানন্দকে আউট অ্যান্ড আউট প্লুরালিস্ট বলা যায় কি না, এটা একটা প্রশ্ন হতে পারে। এবং লক্ষ্য করার বিষয় হচ্ছে যে বিবেকানন্দের অনেক লেকচার্স, বিশেষ করে বাইরে যে বক্তৃতাগুলো দিয়েছেন, সেখানে অনেক জায়গায় উনি হিন্দু ধর্ম বা সনাতন ধর্মকে মানে সমস্ত ধর্মকে উনি মানছেন। হি ওয়াজ নট অ্যান এক্সক্লুসিভিস্ট, বাট সমস্ত ধর্মকে উনি গুরুত্ব দিচ্ছেন, মানছেন, তাদের মধ্যে হারমোনির কথা বলছেন, বাট অ্যাট দ্য সেম টাইম সামহাউ he was perhaps celebrating Hinduism. Sanatan Dharma, not in that sense Hindu, but Sanatana Dharma has all the presuppositions of all other religions. এই রকম একটা সনাতন ধর্মের মধ্যে যে মানে সবাইকে হারমোনাইজ করে নেওয়া, সবাইকে গ্রহণ করার একটা ক্ষমতা রয়েছে, এই অর্থে কোথাও কোথাও একটা ইনক্লুসিভিস্ট আউটলুক আমরা বিবেকানন্দের মধ্যে অন্তত আমি দেখতে পাই কখনো কখনো। তবে আমাদের দেশে যখন বিবেকানন্দ তিনি গুরু ভাইদের চিঠিপত্র লিখছেন, তখন কিন্তু আবার হিন্দুইজম যে এত বড়াই করে নিজেদের নিয়ে, তার যে এত রকমের ত্রুটি বিচ্যুতি আছে, সেগুলোর দিকে দৃষ্টি আকর্ষণ করার চেষ্টা করছেন। এবং উনি তো আসলে ব্যাপারটা ছিল, একটা জিনিস আমাদের মাথায় রাখতে হবে, এই কথাটা কিন্তু একটু নিরপেক্ষভাবে ভাবতে হবে, দর্শনের ছাত্র হিসেবে আমি ভাবছি, সেটা হচ্ছে যে রামকৃষ্ণ ওয়াজ অলওয়েজ দ্য এপিটোম অফ লিবারাল আউটলুক। এবং রামকৃষ্ণকে কোনো সেই অর্থে ধর্মীয় প্রতিষ্ঠা করতে হয়নি, বিবেকানন্দকে কিন্তু একটা প্রতিষ্ঠা করতে হয়েছিল। ফলে লাইক সক্রেটিস, তিনি যেটা বিশ্বাস করেছেন, যেটা প্রিচ করেছেন, সেইটাই প্র্যাকটিস করে গেছেন আজীবন। এই জন্যেই রামকৃষ্ণ অনেক বেশি আমার কাছে হি ইজ মোর লিবারাল, মোর মানে অফ এ প্লুরালিস্ট দেন বিবেকানন্দ। যদিও বিবেকানন্দ রামকৃষ্ণের অনেকগুলো জায়গা নিয়েছেন, নিজের লাভের কনসেপ্টটা বিবেকানন্দ নিয়েছেন ইউনিভার্সাল রিলিজিয়ানের ক্ষেত্রে। তিনি বিবেকানন্দ যে an outspoken atheist is always better than a hypocrite, এই হিপোক্রিটকে কিন্তু রামকৃষ্ণ গ্রহণ নিতে পারতেন না। হিপোক্রেসি ব্যাপারটাকে, প্রিটেনশনকে, ভনিতাকে, ভানকে বিবেকানন্দ নিতে পারতেন না। ফলে তিনি তার মাস্টারের থেকে অনেক কিছু নিয়েছেন। কিন্তু মনে রাখতে হবে যে বিবেকানন্দকে একটা মানে বাইরে গিয়ে রিপ্রেজেন্ট করতে হচ্ছে, হিন্দু ধর্ম হয়ে প্রতিনিধিত্ব করছেন, তখন তাকে এমন কতগুলো কথা বলতে হচ্ছে যেগুলো হয়তো আমাদের কাছে ইনক্লুসিভিস্ট বলে মনে হতে পারে। বাট আমি বারবার বলছি, এটা নিয়ে একটা লম্বা আলোচনা করা সম্ভব, যে কিভাবে রামকৃষ্ণের দ্বারা তিনি প্রভাবিত হচ্ছেন, নো ডাউট। কিন্তু কোন কোন জায়গায় রামকৃষ্ণ বিবেকানন্দর থেকে আলাদা বলে আমাদের কাছে মনে হয়।
Just 1 second, Professor Bhattacharya, this is a very important point which you have made, and the question was very pertinent. There are many non-Bengali people in the audience. Can you please just explain, repeat it in English?
Oh, I see. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes, actually he asked me Bengali, so I started in Bengali. So the problem is that whenever we compare Ramakrishna and Vivekananda, especially in the context of Ramakrishna's view to be more liberal than Vivekananda, because under certain contexts, under certain occasions, Vivekananda seems to be an inclusivist, especially when he had to represent Hinduism in the West, in America, when he went. So he was trying to build up a religious shangho. So whenever you are trying to build up a shangho, a pratishthan, institution, then you have to, perhaps he had to preach that kind of view that Sanatana Dharma has got all the presuppositions of all other religions, in the sense that it can accommodate, it can include, it can harmonize all other religions. But Ramakrishna is not preaching that view. Ramakrishna is of the view that Hinduism is not it is not to include all other religions or harmonize all other religions, because what Hinduism as a religious mode, as a religious means, pantha, moth, it deals with some aspects of the reality. Other religions also deal with some other aspects of reality. The Shakaro deals with in a different way. The Nirakaro deals with in a different way. Those who believe in idol worship deals with in a different way. Those who don't believe in idol worship deals with in different way. So all these aspects are there. So therefore, although Vivekananda definitely borrowed certain elements of Ramakrishna, definitely, because the concept of love, when he was comparing love and duty, Vivekananda, he definitely was under the influence of Ramakrishna. When Vivekananda was saying that religion has got three aspects: the ritualistic aspects, the mythological aspects, and the philosophical aspects. The ritualistic aspects, the mythological aspects seem to be contradictory, but the philosophical aspects reveal the reality, because they actually indicate the same ultimate reality. Although, like Ramakrishna, Vivekananda hardly makes it very clear that all these religions can grasp only a true aspect, or only one or two aspects, true aspects of the reality. Possible now, only I would say that as we can consider Ramakrishna out and out a pluralist, maybe under certain occasions we have to consider Vivekananda as an inclusivist, but never as an exclusivist.
Shoikot Bhattacharya, what was the definition of religion in terms of Ramakrishna's thought? How that religion affected the political thoughts?
First of all, I told you that Ramakrishna was not a system builder. He never defined what is religion. He gave certain marks. I discussed those marks of religion. Some positive conditions, some negative conditions. Now, the crucial marks are the negative conditions. That if you want to be religious, or if any religion has to be considered as a genuine religion, it must preach the cultivation of love and forbearance on the one hand, and it must preach that we should diminish our egoism and we should diminish our selfishness. Now, much later, Vivekananda defined religion. He tried to define. And I think that particular definition was foreshadowed in the thoughts of Ramakrishna. And that definition, everybody perhaps knows that religion is the manifestation of divinity already in man. That definition was given by Vivekananda. Now, this kind of divinity, the divine reality, Ramakrishna, before Vivekananda, he had already explained that these ethical virtues, the genuine virtues, and these are not impossible virtues according to Ramakrishna. If you cultivate, then you are on the path of religion. So love and forbearance is there. And if you understand that is those virtues, you will understand that the ultimate reality, or God, or the divine, it has assumed all the forms, and at the same time it is a formless. Now, if you go to Hegel, the very beginning of Hegel, if you are interested, anybody is interested in Hegel's metaphysics, ontology in that sense, in metaphysics, that when Hegel starts his book, Phenomenology of Mind or Phenomenology of Spirit, according to Hegel, the being, the Geist, in its original form is nothing. So according to Hegel, being is actually nothing. Why nothing? Because there is no attribute. Whenever you give attributes, whenever you give qualities or you impose attributes, it gets determined and it gets limited. You give certain attributes to the chair, and that is why the chair is different from the table, and the table is different from the blackboard. So to ascribe attributes to assign attributes to the reality is to limit, is to determine it, is to determine that reality. So it is actually nothing. So it is actually nothing. And it takes, in spite of that, it can take all the forms. Because if we take all this as the manifestations, so the point is that as far as religion, Ramakrishna could understand. I didn't mention that. He was a master of the psychology of religious understanding, as far as I understand. Because he thought that the Jnani, the Pragyavan, those who have taken the course of knowledge, who have taken the course of knowledge that Aham Brahmasmi, the knowledge of the unity with the reality, that wholeness, that union. So Jnani's path is more difficult. But the common people, the very common people who are always fighting in their mundane affairs, so they can take the course of bhakti as devotee. And as a devotee, he can shape, he can realize his God by giving a form, because it is possible. A devotee who would love the God, it is personal God, maybe it can be Kali, the mother, it can be Kali, the daughter, it can be Krishna, the friend, the Sakha, whatever it be. But a bhakta has to have the form of the God. But ultimately, and when Ramakrishna used to deliver or used to teach his own disciples, core disciples, like Abhidananda, Brahmananda, Vivekananda, he used to teach that Nirakara Brahma, the path of Jnana. But when the common people used to go to him, Ramakrishna used to teach in a very common language, and he used to emphasize the path of bhakti, the path of taking the God in a particular form. So God is actually formless, but you can think of God having a form. So you can understand this is the fascinating aspect of Ramakrishna. That is why I said this is pluralism. This is the liberal understanding of Ramakrishna.
Next question, Purbayan Jha. Does the realization of the infinitude that lies inherent in a man play a crucial role in the thoughts of Sri Ramakrishna?
Yes, actually, Purbayan is there. It's very close to me, like my brother from Gaurbanga University. Thank you, Purbayan. Actually, the question this issue I raised in my discussion, because the realization of the infinitude. I told you that when Professor Mohanty and Frank Morales, they raised questions against Yatomat Tatopat, that view, because Mohanty had some skeptical attitude towards that view of Ramakrishna, and Frank Morales had completely criticized Ramakrishna's view. To defend Ramakrishna, I mentioned that Ramakrishna Ramakrishna's pluralism that I want to emphasize, and his liberal outlook in this context, the source of that kind of pluralism lies in the ontology, and that ontology is the realization of the infinitude. And you are very much right that this is what Ramakrishna wanted to emphasize, because if I have the idea of reality, again I am saying it can be the Geist, it can be the Mahakalo, it can be the Mahashunno. It is limitless, it is undetermined, it is infinite. Now the infinite has infinitude of aspects. Maybe I know, I as a person, I do not have the complete knowledge of the infinite. And to some extent, it is also like the Kant who said that I cannot have the knowledge normally as a common person. I do not have the knowledge of that reality. And Ramakrishna could understand that, and he said that that is why we use our intellect to make certain conjectures. But all the conjectures, according to Ramakrishna, about the God, about the ultimate reality, about the infinitude, seem to be meaningless. Because, according to Ramakrishna, it's not possible for the intellect to grasp the whole reality completely. It is almost ineffable. And Purban, since you have raised this question, it is so nice question. There have been certain scholars, I forget the name, one was Smart and the other was Neufeld or someone like that. They interpreted that when Ramakrishna had tried to interpret Buddhism in his own way, because when Buddha told remain silent, when he was asked whether there is Atman or God, he remained silent. When he was asked, is there is no God or there is no self, he remained silent. So Ramakrishna interpreted this was ineffability. He could not say, he could not describe the God, because it is not possible to grasp that abang manasogochor. Even that ineffability is also mentioned in our Indian scripture. So that is why only we can have the sense of that infinitude, that kind of realization. But Ramakrishna says that if you cultivate that path, if you take the course of Jnana, perhaps one day the Jnanis will realize the wholeness. I cannot say that. But the common people can take the course of Bhakti, because for me, the Ramo, it's a very, the common figure, the common name at present in India, the Ramo. I give an example with the Ramo. But I am a Bhakta of Ramo. Ramakrishna has no problem. But the limiting and limited attachment to a narrowly defined ideal of divine divinity, when I try to think of the ultimate reality as Ramo, for example, it is a narrow ideal of the divinity according to Ramakrishna. But gradually, this would give access to a truer understanding, to a broader understanding of the universality of that ideal, and that expresses itself through numeral forms. So, the common people initially starts with the Rama or Krishna or Kali as the ultimate reality. But gradually he would understand that it is the only one aspect of the reality, and he would take the course of the universality thus. And for example, the devotee of the Rama would not renounce Rama, would not renounce Kali, would not renounce Krishna, but his finer, refined understanding would help him to realize, to see Rama reflected in Krishna, to realize Rama reflected in Kali, to realize Rama reflected in Allah, to realize Rama reflected in the Christ. So on the one hand, there is, but on the other hand, as a bhakta, you can take the course of having a form of the God, and thereby gradually you can refine your understanding, which and leading to the view that Ramo or Krishna is only the one form, one aspect of that reality, and it can be found in the Kali, it can be found in the Krishna, it can be found in Christ. So that much I can tell. So that comes from the realization of the infinitude. That is the main point.
Manoranjan Prasad Singh, don't you think Ramakrishna's ideas promoted the idea of dharma over religion?
That is in our scripture, definitely. In dharma means so many things in our Indian tradition. The righteous actions. I finished my lecture with this view that Ramakrishna used the word dharma or moth. Definitely. Since I have to deliver the lecture, I use the expression religion. But I told in my lecture, I described in my lecture, or I explained it lucidly moth. And that moth or dharma has a predominance over the word religion, because religion is something, when we consider as institution religion, that is exclusivist in its nature. That is religion. From our perspective, that is the perspective of dharma or moth from Ramakrishna's perspective. Definitely.
Next, Prakash Chakraborty, what are the goals of the Ramakrishna Mission Religious Society?
All-round development of human personality. That much I can say. That is the mission. And Vivekananda actually determined the goal of Ramakrishna mission, that is Atmanamokharthang Jagad Dhitaya, or for the emancipation of my own self and for the welfare and well-being of the entire universe. That is the goal of Ramakrishna mission.
Alok Tendon, till one has no experience or realization of infinity oneself, how can one agree or disagree with Ramakrishna?
Yes, Ramakrishna also told this, that he was such a liberal person. He even said in Kathamrito, since I am preaching this kind of pluralism or Yatomat Tatopat, I never, because even Vivekananda went to Ramakrishna and he was a young man who even tried to test Ramakrishna, and Ramakrishna was very much aware of this, and he said that you first definitely try in your own life. Initially, you try to cultivate those virtues in your life, because that is why I told you that the Gyani's path is different, not the same with the Bhakto's path or course. So he simply asks, it is true that the common people do not have that kind of religious experience, religious understanding. And moreover, when Ramakrishna was preaching this kind of religious tolerance or pluralism, I told that I am fascinated by his psychology of religious understanding. Because sometimes I told you that tolerance seems to be a negative concept, because it asks me to accept something that I do not want to accept. I do not stand with that. Now, Ramakrishna could understand the psychology of the common people. And that is why he told us that whatever course you have, whatever action you take, you first try to do that honestly. If you are a teacher, you do your job honestly with dedication. And that view was later taken by Vivekananda as work is worship. So not the, you have to work. First of all. Secondly, the virtues you have to cultivate. While you are in a very short span, you are in your family, in your society, where you are working together, you have to cultivate those virtues. And Ramakrishna, I think, tried to develop the third alternative as far as toleration or tolerance is concerned. Because on the one hand, tolerance seems to be synonymous with something that I have to accept, but I don't want to accept. So tolerance is some sort of negativity, weakness, all this. On the other hand, the extreme opposite of tolerance is violence. Now, I would remind you that story of the snake. When the teacher of the snake gave a lesson, teaching to that snake that you have to be nonviolent. You have to cultivate that virtue in your own life. Try every day. I told in the beginning that holiness is a process. According to Ramakrishna, holiness is the process. It is a growth towards wholeness. So we have to take the path of that growth. Now, the snake was advised by the teacher that you take the course of nonviolence, practice tolerance. Thereby, you would reach that kind of divinity, or you will realize that oneness of divinity. Now, after some days, when the teacher passes by that field, and to his utter surprise, the teacher, the guru, found the snake lying around beside the hole, that it became almost weak. It could not move at all. So the guru asked the snake, why are you so feeble, so weak? You can't move even. The snake told his guru that you told me to be nonviolent. You told me to practice tolerance. But every day, whenever I come out of the hole, the boys play here, people, walking around the field, and they, whenever see me, they throw stone at me. And every day I have to tolerate that. I'm practicing tolerance. I'm practicing nonviolence. Then his teacher told the snake a very nice comment that I never told you not to raise your hood and not to rattle or not to hiss. I only told you not to bite. In Bengali, ফোঁস করতে আমি বারণ করিনি, আমি কামড়াতে বারণ করেছি. So you see, this is the middle path. This is the third alternative between tolerance as weakness, between tolerance as a very weak point or negativity, and extreme form of violence. So the common people need to practice all these as Ramakrishna would ask us. So thank you, sir, Professor Tandon, for asking me this question.
Thank you.
Prakash,
Thank you so much, Professor
Prakash,
Pralayankar Bhattacharyya and Professor
Prakash.
Pradip Basu.
Prakash.
Yes, sir.
I said that I have two brief questions. If there are no questions, then I can ask my questions.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Okay. Professor Bhattacharya, I have two questions. I am stating very briefly. One is that if I know that your religion is incorrect, then knowing that full well, how can I treat my religion and your religion on an equal par? Will that not be a kind of dishonesty on my part? I repeat that a Muslim believes that this paganism or idol worshipping is false. how can he or she treat Hinduism as equally respected? Or that is my first question. And my second question, very briefly, I state that almost similar questions, as you mentioned about the snake, that Ramakrishna advised positive conditions, love and forbearance, and negative conditions, be giving up selfishness, egoism. Suppose I preach love, but if the other person does not believe in love and has a violent attitude to me, in that case, what should I do? I mean that if everyone agrees that everyone will have an attitude of love to one another, just like Hobbes' social contract, everyone is surrendering his individual power to the power of the state, the external power. So everyone is equal and everybody is secure. But if any very powerful person does not surrender this power, then what will be Hobbesian solution? I don't know. A similar kind of situation. If I have love to a gunda, hooligan, just like the snake practices non-violence to human beings, but boys and pedestrians, they throw stones. Then what will the snake do? The solution of force and not bite, solution of hiss and not bite, that seems to be insufficient to me. I don't know whether I'm right or wrong. Please explain these two things.
Your first question was if when I know some religion as incorrect. Now, if I have to answer from this standpoint, from the perspective of Ramakrishna's teachings or his views, I would say, as far as your first question is concerned, when I come to the conclusion that the other religion is incorrect, the question is, before coming to this conclusion, Ramakrishna say, I need to practice that religion. First of all, I need to practice that religion fully, and after that, I can conclude that religion is incorrect. Number one. Number two, this kind of the knowledge of incorrectness, according to Ramakrishna, takes place on the basis of our understanding of the rituals, of the rites, of the mythological aspect. Because if I go through the different religions, if it has to be a genuine religion according to Ramakrishna, it must preach that, first of all, it has to put at the center that kind of infinite reality, and it has to preach that love and forbearance and all these things. And that is why perhaps the Brahmo religion would be considered as religion by Ramakrishna, but perhaps Ramakrishna would not consider Marxism as a religion. That is true. So the ritualistic aspects differ. We conflict with each other on the basis of those things. And Ramakrishna says that when we, first of all, I have to know other religions. Without knowing other religions, I cannot come to the conclusion. Now, if I know the religions and if they are genuine religions, they have to preach these messages. And we find that the texts of all religions, texts or Bible or any other text, they basically preach love or forbearance in very things, but they are not these doing. So Ramakrishna religion does not teach, will not be considered genuine religion. Now, as far as the question is concerned, it's to answer to this question because, Gandhi had answered that I still love that person if he opposes me or in that. Now, it requires a lot of courage and all these things. But definitely, I told a few minutes back that if I can develop or I can think of the third alternative, any alternative of that. So first of all, I have to protest. I have to raise my hood. I have to hiss. I have to rattle. Secondly, I can, or before that, I have to go to a dialogue with them. Secondly, I have to rattle, I have to hiss, I have to protest. Thirdly, Ramakrishna would say perhaps that if you can think of some other third alternative, third alternative in the sense, I won't tolerate this kind of injustice, nor I will take the extreme form of violence or extreme form of intolerance, because intolerance or violence, extreme form, always gives rise to some other forms of exploitation and violence. So I would continuously try to, to make others believe so that they can be free from such dogmatic outlooks or something like that. Now, after that, even, I am getting exploited or, I am getting completely devastated, then perhaps for the sake of existence, now perhaps those who have reached, I have not reached, if anybody has reached that kind of excellence or perfection, he may forgive or he might forgive even at the cost of his life. That's the difference. But we, the common people, then perhaps might take the course of those things, because even in Krishna, in the Gita, even Vivekananda, after Ramakrishna said, as I've told you, that the outspoken atheist is always better than a person who is a hypocrite. So, as you have told, that if continuously I am shattered and exploited and devastated, then I have to take a course, and maybe for the sake of self-defense, I might take a course of violence, but that would be very sudden. That is not planned. And another thing has to be remembered in this context, perhaps which we learn from the Mahabharata, and which also we can think of Ramakrishna's thoughts. That is, Pratihingsha is always worse than hingsha. Because you see, some injustice is happening to me, and suddenly I take the course of violence. That is separate. But if I plan to devastate, to shatter, to exploit somebody or kill somebody, for some material gain or material purpose, that is definitely a kind of violence which we shouldn't do. So, a kind of accepting the injustice and extreme violence, or what we should say, a kind of, what I should say, the middle path, if we can take. For example, somebody has done harm to me, then first of all, I can take the course of legal course, whatever is there and all these things. I have to protest. I have to sit for dialogue. I have to take the legal course in today's society. And then even I have to protest to a higher degree that you are, apprehending. But my intention is not to harm that person. My intention only is to to uh, to ensure justice in that context. So that is all. So we have to think of the middle path between these two: retribution and violence and non-violence and all these things.
Thank you. Prakash, any other question? Abdul Salim, how can Ramakrishna Mission and ISKCON work together for the betterment of the Hindu community, especially where Hindus are together? Abdul
Now,
Salim, another
from
question. What is the view of Ramakrishna Mission of Islam and Christian? So he put here two questions.
Yes. As far as the first question is concerned, there it is written, I found that for the development of Hindus, Ramakrishna himself would not subscribe to this view. He would say, for the development of the people, for the development of the downtrodden, for the development of the poor, for the development of the marginalized, for the well-being of all people, not only of the Hindus. So it is the view that, first of all. Secondly, Ramakrishna Mission, ISKCON work together for the better. Yes, everybody can work together. The problem is that we cannot diminish our egoism. It's very difficult. We cannot diminish our selfishness, selfish outlook. We cannot diminish our egoism. So whenever we think of working in favor of some institution, then I consider my institution is superior to other institutions. That's the problem. That's why people cannot work together. But that teaching can help us. That is why I told that Ramakrishna's teaching can help us, that we can work together for the betterment of society if we think that what I am doing, it is only the one aspect. Let other peoples contribute their own contribution. So together, therefore, we can build up a society as far as social, because Ramakrishna, when Vivekananda went to Ramakrishna for the salvation, the complete liberation, Ramakrishna told him that, why are you becoming so selfish that you are desiring only your own salvation, your own emancipation? There are so many people who are poor, who are downtrodden, who are marginalized, who are suffering in their daily lives in our society. You don't want to do anything for them. You are so selfish, Norin. Now, that was the comment made by Ramakrishna. And the point is that, as I told you, this demands a separate discussion, the psychology of religious understanding of Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna never told us to crush our desires, to crush our lusts. Normally, we think that we have to crush our desires, we have to crush our lusts. But Ramakrishna is not saying that we have to crush our desire. He's saying that we have to channelize, we have to harness that crush to a better understanding, to a better goal, to practice of spirituality, to practice methodology. Because you must have desire, because that is the force, that is the life force. Your desire, your lust is the life force. You don't have to crush that. Otherwise, you cannot work. But you have to harness that desire, that lust, to that goal of practicing, tolerance, forbearance, love, diminishing selfishness, diminishing egoism.
Abdul Salim, 3 questions. How does the Ramakrishna Mission promote religious harmony? And before this,
that
he
I've
asked
already
the
almost
second
answered that.
question. Islam and Christianity, about them, what is
religious
the position of Ramakrishna Mission?
I have told you. You see that today I am explaining Ramakrishna's view. I am not discussing the Ramakrishna mission's view. As I have told you, when anything is established as an institution, then it has to go through certain rules, regulation, do's and don'ts. That is a separate issue. But Ramakrishna's teaching, as far as Ramakrishna teaching is concerned, as I have explained, that it takes a very, very liberal outlook towards Christianity, towards Islam, because all religions grasp or understand only one or two true aspects of that infinite reality. So there is no contradiction as far as Ramakrishna is concerned. And the last question was harmony, that I have told you. Again, harmony not in the sense religious inclusiveness, but in the sense religious pluralism. In that sense, harmony has to be taken. Harmony means giving equal status, equal respect to all other religions, because I do not know, I do not practice the common people, those religions. I can practice only my religion. So I do not know how much or what is there. Even the scholars, the teachers like Ramakrishna says that those religions also can grasp or can reveal only one or two aspects, true aspects of the reality, of the infinitude. So in that sense, there is a kind of openness, there is a kind of dialogue, and therefore, as far as your question is concerned, religious pluralism is today a necessary aspect of our inter-religious discourse, which is an essential aspect of philosophy of peace or peace building all over the world. That is why religious pluralism is concerned. But the problem that example was given, a very nice example was given by Ramakrishna, that if you try to, strike a matchstick, and if the matchstick is damp, then it will not spark. If you continuously strike 50 matchsticks, they will never spark. But if a dry matchstick you take, it will spark. So Ramakrishna says that if our minds are always soaked like the damp matchstick in the damp of rituals, egoism, selfishness, rites and rituals, then it will not spark. But if our mind becomes dry, in that sense dry, that it is no more soaked in those rituals and rites and in those ritualistic aspects, then our mind can spark. And that spark can take us to that kind of realization. In our common life, we also realize, you will find in your daily life, you go to, you are outside, you are going to your workplace, and suddenly you find a girl of say 6 or 7 years old on the footpath. Your heart for the time being sparks. You feel for that boy. After that you forget, and you go to workplace and forget everything. But we also feel the sparks. We cannot deny that. Our hearts also spark for those things. But mostly we do not feel those sparks because our mind is soaked in this, all the do's and don'ts and all these assignments and rituals. So hardly our hearts, our minds spark in those cases. That is actually the psychology of religious understanding.
Prakash, any other question?
No, sir. Thank you so much for such a beautiful discussion. Thank you, Professor Pradip Basu and Professor Pralayankar Bhattacharyya. এবং সকলকে অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ যারা এতক্ষণ ধরে আমাদের আলোচনাটি শুনলেন। সকলকে অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে আজকের আলোচনা আমরা এখানেই শেষ করছি।
Thank you, Professor Pralayankar Bhattacharyya. Thank you. Thank you
you
for
so
your
much.
time. It was a brilliant discussion. Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you
sir.
so much for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Good night. Good night. Good night to all.